So, thank you for coming along to the superannuation session. My name's Ant McKenna. I was born in Wurundjeri country in eastern Victoria, live on Cubby Cubby country on the Sunshine Coast, and want to acknowledge the traditional owners of all of those lands and pay my respects to elders past and present. And feel free to add your country into the chat as we go. Um, the ALMBC, Australian Live Music Business Council, independent, not-for-profit organisation, all about grassroots live music. 2,134 members, including 197 financial members. We're 3 off 200. So if you get something out of tonight and you're not a financial member yet, please do give that little bit of money to keep us surviving as well. It makes a big difference. Um, that includes some of the biggest independent agencies, bookers, promoters, and venues and companies, and mostly sole traders, mostly individuals that just want to be involved in something good. We provide advocacy on behalf of the live music sector. We actively support, celebrate, and promote Australian grassroots live music. Things like ticketing transparency, insurance, grassroots venues and festivals, ticket levies, global ownership implications, precinct development and planning and policy, and funding parity, superannuation, stacks more. Anything you think we should be doing that we're not, let us know. We're getting around the country as much as we can to events such as Big Sound, WAMCon, IndieCon, but also one of the things we love to do is getting out to regional and remote places and shine a light on those spaces. So if you want the ALMBC to come and do something from your location, again, please let us know. I'm going to introduce Kylie in 1 second, but just before I do, if you've got a question, please put it in the chat and I'll get to it. We're going to go right up to the hour, the full hour, and then we'll have anyone that wants to stick around for questions after that. If you've got a question that's a burning question as we go, let us know, put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to that as early as possible. So, Kylie Thompson, Managing Director of Sorrento Strategic Accounting, an award-winning, she hasn't put that in, award-winning, oh, she has down the bottom, sorry, specialist tax and advisory firm for the music industry, 30 years experience. Kylie doesn't really mention this, but she was really potentially the driving brain behind the success of people like John Butler and the Waifs and those first kind of crew of independent musicians that broke away in Australia. She's an active industry advocate and multi-award winning accountant, and she's going to run it from here with Ned.
Thanks, Ant. I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming from the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and acknowledge them as traditional custodians of the land where I'm coming from today. So superannuation, I'm going to try and go through a bit quicker today. I've presented this a few times now, and some people know about why we're paying super for subcontractor musicians. And now it's all going to get even harder with payday super coming in on the 1st of July. So basically, we'll just start with the fact that all Australian employers are required to make compulsory super contributions for their employees in accordance with the Superannuation Guarantee Administration Act of 1992. So basically, it's been in way over 30 years, and most of you that will have been on salary and wages during that period have hopefully been getting paid your super every 3 months. Currently running at 12%. So at a minimum, employees, including casuals, should be paid super if they're over 18 or if they're under 18 and they work more than 30 hours a week. Why there's been such a big change has been 4 years ago on the 1st of July 2022, there was always a minimum before you had to pay super for people, and that was a calendar monthly minimum of $150. So the reason it's kind of seems to have come to light in the music industry is that that $450 minimum got dropped. So now it counts from the first person you pay that you are liable to pay super for. Now, what is an employee? So in common law employment or relationship, there's a contractor service. Contractor service is based on a mutuality of obligation, meaning that an employer makes an offer to someone for work and accompanying remuneration pays them, and the employee accepts the terms of the offer by performing the work. Obviously, it is much better to always have a contract in place, but that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that you do have this employee-employer relationship if it's a verbal agreement. Now, different from this is an independent contractor. So this is where most people think, well, each individual sole trader musician is an independent contractor. Why would I have to pay their super? So in common law, that an employee is very distinct from an independent contractor. The employee is employed for a contract of service, whereas an independent contractor is engaged by a principal on a contract of service. There's been a lot of court cases on this, and courts sometimes deem someone an employee who they may have a contract that says they're independent, but for all intents and purposes, the courts have proven that they deem them to be employees. The problem with this distinction is it's totally irrelevant to the music industry. So that's where people are thinking, I don't have to pay a sole trader musician that only comes and gigs for me, even if it's once any super, because they've got their own, they're their own person, they're an independent contractor. That isn't the case. Do I have to, sorry. So live performers are deemed employees for the purposes of superannuation. So that's the difference here. And the reason that everyone's talking about it in the music industry is because of this $450 minimum getting dropped 4 years ago. Now, this is the specific section in the Act which has been here since 1992. The following are employees for the purposes of this Act: a person who is paid to perform or present or to participate in the performance or presentation of any music, play, dance, entertainment, goes on to cover sports people, displays or promotional activity, or any similar activity involving the exercise of intellectual, artistic, musical, physical, or any other personal skills, is an employee of the person liable to make the payment. So it's actually this specific section of the Act that basically overrides our general knowledge of the fact that someone's an employee or an independent contractor. And there is actually a specific questionnaire on the ATO website where you go through and say, is this person, do I have to pay super for them or not? And there's actually this added question that says, are you paying a musician, basically, to sort of cut it down. So this is what catches musos to say you should pay their super. So it also captures a person providing services in connection with that musical performance. So this would capture people like sound engineers, lighting people. It does get a little bit grayer there. To me, people that are documenting the performance like a videographer or a photographer, I don't believe are an integral part of the actual performance, but that's there is a little bit of room for grey there. And a person who's paid to perform services in connection with the making of any film, tape or disc, or of any television or radio broadcast. So that definitely captures your radio announcers and your television presenters, but that's again could be where there might be a bit of a tricky thing there about a videographer, I guess. So we'll keep going. So it specifically captures sole traders. So that's really who we're talking about. So people that are in partnerships or companies or trusts, you do not have to pay their super. But there's a tricky one. If we just go back a screen there, and about a true partnership, the next slide, sorry. This is where there's a lot of debate within the industry, because quite often you'll have a band and they just aren't set up correctly like they should be as a band partnership. So to be a proper partnership, you should have a separate partnership tax file number, a separate partnership ABN. Everyone shares control and management of the band. Don't pay any income tax in a partnership, because it all goes onto the partnership return and then gets distributed in terms of the distribution on their partnership agreement. And the actual partnership should be lodging a separate tax return. So let's just say we have a partnership of 4 people and they gross 10K over the year. Then the normal thing would be the income of 10K goes in, and at the end of the year, the $2,500 profit goes on each of those 4 partners' tax returns. Now, the reason there's a lot of debate in the industry, and I've been doing this for well over 30 years, is that a lot of the young bands come out and there's always an organiser, and that organiser is the one that books the gigs, organises rehearsals, sets everything up. A lot of times they might not actually get to the point of getting a separate partnership tax file number, and they'll actually bill it all under their own sole trader ABN, which is really bad news in terms of this superannuation issue, if you like. So we'll keep going. Okay, so if anyone's a company billing you, you do not have an obligation to pay them their super. Now, in terms of as a partnership, as anyone that's looking at this going, should I be a sole trader partnership trust or company? That really is something you want to go and talk to your accountant about, because it all depends on your personal circumstances, and it's best to get proper advice in terms of an entity. You may have heard a bit in the press lately about trusts that have just been smashed by the budget announcements. So it's really quite important at this very point in time for the next few years that you do go and seek proper financial advice. So when is super paid? Well, up until now, everyone had to pay it every 3 months so once every 3 months by the 28th day after each quarter, 28th of July, 28th of October, 28th of Jan, 28th of April. From July 1, which is only 29 days away, if you pay someone that you've got the obligation, you must pay their super, which does include subcontractors, not just employees that you think of are on wages. It must be paid within 7 days of paying the person for their performance. So there basically isn't much of a window of opportunity at all to ensure that you get that to their super fund by the 7th day. So the whole industry here, the bookkeeping, accounting industry, is just saying you need to pay that super payment when you pay the person. So both on the same day, to try your best to make sure that the super's going to get there on time. I've just got a few examples here that everyone will get access to the letterheads. So we're just going to keep moving a bit along to the more important points. But there's some pretty good examples here about where you might think that you wouldn't pay super, but you do. A good example would be a festival. So you've got your festival. They might have 30 acts over the weekend, and they might think that they've got 30 bands performing, but when they actually have filled in the contracts, 20 of those bands have actually put an individual person down and an individual's ABN on there. Now, so that festival organiser should have their processes well and truly in place to know well before that festival that they need to make sure that they've got that sole trader's super details there, so that when they pay them the $1,000 festival fee, that they're going to pay the $120 into that person's super on the same day, so they don't get caught. Okay, we'll keep going. Yeah, we'll just keep moving through these examples, I think. So here's an example of a principal that they could be any entity themselves, but the person that they're actually working with operates out of the trust, partnership, or company. Then the principal does not have to pay their super. So I've actually got a lot of guys at the moment, especially sound guys, who are getting really up there and touring a lot, that it makes sense in their personal circumstances to operate out of a company. Well, I'm telling them to basically make sure that they put the 12% on top of their normal fee they were charging as a sole trader, to make sure they then have sufficient funds to pay their own super, and they're no worse off just for changing the way they operate. But the actual principal paying the contractor doesn't have to pay the super directly into the person's super fund. It's the person operating out of the company's got to pay their employee super into their super fund. Again, you've got a venue operating under trust structure, book a band who trades as a partnership. Absolutely no obligation with that partnership ABN to have to pay any super. So I know as a fact in the industry, there's been a lot of booking agents putting bands in pubs that are just getting to the point, especially with payday super, where they're just basically saying, we will not deal with sole traders, it's too much of a hassle. So again, it comes around to what's happening in the industry, and each individual musician must be going to their accountant to talk through these issues and what they're finding. And it shouldn't be a situation, but I've been hearing about it for 4 years since this came in, that some people are too scared to even ask their agent for their super, because they're quite happy that they've had this regular $300 gig at the same pub every week for X amount of years, and they don't want to rock the boat. But that shouldn't be how it operates. The more information out there, and the more people ask for their super, the better off the whole industry is going to be in terms of making sure that sole traders get what they deserve.
Kylie, while we're here, quick question someone's asked about running a little not-for-profit that engages artists. Sometimes they obviously still have to pay superannuation on those payments to those artists. Is that correct?
That's correct. So it's really is important that people know these rules, and it's not so much even like the first thing is allowing the extra 12% to the artist. I am just full on saying, why would you engage people to work for you? You should have a written contract. So it's clear as a bell. You don't need these issues after the event. You don't need, if you're running a festival with 30 acts there, you don't need to be scrambling to find the extra 12% later, or be scrambling to get the proper super details. So now this is where I'm saying, under this new super payday, you've got to be basically insisting, if I don't get you, it's on all our forms onboarding the acts. If I don't get your super details and I don't have them the day I want to pay you, then you will not be getting paid, because I'm not getting fined for not paying your super the day I pay you. Okay, keep going. Sorry. Music as a business. This comes up quite often. What happens if I'm using those hobby forms, the statement of a supplier form? Now, we have not, as an industry, I've spoken to lots of people at lots of levels. Has anyone been able to find out whether we should be paying super if the person gives you a hobby form? And there's been no definitive answer coming anywhere out of the ATO. I just maintain there is no certainty about this. And if you had 30 acts that are giving you hobby forms, then I'd be wanting to pay the super, because I wouldn't want to be caught 12% and fines and penalties later. If without a definitive answer, the only way to get a definitive answer is to put a private ruling into the ATO, and there isn't a festival out there at the moment that wants to be the guinea pig. So that's my advice from coming from myself personally. I'd be paying the super. I also doubt too with these hobby forms, are they a genuine hobby? If they're actually gigging every week or if the fees are up anywhere over $75, which it says on the form. If you're doing a once in a blue moon gig, fair enough. But a lot of these people using hobby forms are pretty regularly gigging.
And we've got
And
another question, Kylie, about paying music teachers who are contractors. You would have to pay super on that as well.
uh, music music teachers as contractors, it would all come down to the contract. They're not doing a musical performance, they're doing the role of teaching. So they come under the normal subcontractor rules, and it would depend on the contract between, say, as an example, the school and the teachers. And I know there's a lot of times there that the schools are actually getting the students, the parents to pay the teachers direct. And a lot of schools also aren't paying the super. And if to me, it depends on, yeah, it's really that what it comes down to is that contract and who's responsible if something goes wrong, things like that. So that's certainly, that is not a musical performance which comes under that section 12 of the Act. Teachers do not come under that. Okay, so yeah, I've just got the standard ideas here about saying, am I in business or am I a hobby? Obviously, if someone's got an ABN, they're holding themselves out to the ATO that they are in business and they're running an enterprise. So again, if someone's giving you an invoice with an ABN on, you should, as the person paying them, always be looking up ABN lookup and making sure what entity are you dealing with. It'll tell you if it's a partnership or a trust or a company or a sole trader or a not-for-profit or whatever. It actually has the type of entity there. So it also will tell you if they're registered for GST or not. So anyone paying someone should really always be double checking. Any good bookkeeper would be double checking that the ABN is genuine. If you don't get a genuine ABN, you're meant to withhold 47.5 cents in the dollar of their payment. So yeah, there we go. So do crews such as a tour manager, sole trader get super? Pretty much if the tour manager is an integral part of the performance, most tour managers I know would be getting, if they're a sole trader, would genuinely be getting per diems. They're on the thing, they're helping set up, they're there. I would have thought they're part of the crew.
Go on to the next one, Kylie.
Yep, sorry.
That's right.
And that was where I was saying about no clear guidance on the hobby forms. So we'll keep going. Payday super, what you need to know. Okay, so that's what I was saying. It's gone from quarterly to paying it within 7 days of paying. They really are going to keep an eye on this too. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting the next 6 months from July to December, how everyone's, one, even going to know about this, two, know how to do it, and three, get it done on time. So we'll keep next slide. I just put this slide in here. Sorry, Ziggy, definitely if the sound person is a sole trader, then the band needs to pay the sound guys super because they're paying a person as part of the performance. I think I'll leave the questions to the end, Ant, because we've got to get on, keep moving. Okay, so sorry, I've just put that diagram in there. It's quite intricate. I'm not going to go through it now, but just to give you an idea how hard it is here. The QE day is the day that you pay the person, and basically there's just all these separate rules and exceptions about how quick you have to turn that around before you're going to get pinged. So if you've got a new employee, they give you 20 business days, but I think it is very complicated. If you don't get it there on time, it's just going to be horrendous. in terms of trying to work out where you're at. So my goal here is to try and educate as many people as possible in the next 29 days and try and get everyone to start practicing now in June and trying to pay the super at the same time you pay people, and make sure you've got all your systems sorted out before July 1. So why it matters to the music industry is obviously I feel like one is an information thing. People aren't even sure whether they should be paying. But two, the payment of paying musicians is so ad hoc. So, it's just not like an ordinary payroll. So we really need to be making sure that we've know what we're doing and ready to go and got the paperwork sorted. Trying to chase up people for paperwork after they've actually performed for you is a nightmare. So it could be your artist managers, booking agencies, bands. I know a lot of bands go on tour, they'll be paying the support bands. Some of the venues, when you've got an interstate band going, like I might have a WA band going to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and they'll be maybe relying on the venues to, it just depends, the promoter, who is paying the bands. It's the person paying the people the sole traders that perform, that have got the obligation. Okay. The biggest change is that you've got to pay. So weekly pay, you've got to pay weekly. Fortnightly pay, you've got to pay fortnightly. So basically, I'm trying to say, even people with a basic weekly payroll, why would you do this 52 times a year? You're better off fortnightly, 26 times a year. If you can string out your normal pays to monthly, your regular pays, it's only 12 times a year. It's really going to be about being organised. The excuse me, the penalties are absolutely horrendous. Late payment penalties can reach up to 60% in some cases on what you're late. So also, if you're running your own company, you've got, as directors, you can actually be cop direct penalty notices, even though you're hiding behind a company, if you're not paying these obligations. Sorry, yeah, I just put this in there, not going in detail, but just showing you. They've even gone to the trouble to say these are the green light people, the medium people, and the high risk people, and where we are going to be focusing. So if you've already been late on SGC in the past, you're in the red zone before this new law even comes in. So that's what I'm trying to get on the front foot to say to everyone, please just take notice, this is real, and make sure you're organised to get this paid on time come next month. Hopefully most of you know now that the Small Business Clearinghouse, the free one at the ATO, if you've been using that, that's totally abolished on the 1st of July. What smart person in the ATO thought it'd be a great idea to remove that the same day that you brought this in? I don't know, but all I do know is it's going. If you currently use it, you want to download all your history now. Once it's gone, it's gone. So again, you really want to be getting something in place in June and make sure you've got it all set up and working with your software, your business portal, etc. Before D-Day. That's all of those things there. Onboarding procedures for new musicians and crew. Making sure whoever's doing the pays knows about this, not just you as the owner. Depending on your software, I guess, how quickly they're going to be able to turn around. The big guys like your Xeros, your MyObs, your QuickBooks, they're obviously, there's huge more specialised payroll service software behind out there as well for the bigger companies. But all of these guys are saying, yeah, we're going to be all organised. So again, I go back to saying, get written agreements with all your band members, your bands you represent, any crew. Keep track of all your payments. Don't go paying anyone for a performance until you've got the super information in your hand to pay the super the same day. They're not going to cop the fines and penalties. You will, if it's your obligation. Uh, Key takeaways, it's a major change. Um, Try and pay less frequently so you don't have to do this as often. Make sure you know who the people are that you're liable for. Um, Early preparation will reduce basically getting pinged by the ATO, and now's the time to get this all organised before July 1. I'll just quickly maybe fly through this and just got, yeah, this is just some, we'll just fly through these examples. You can look these up later. Um, yeah, we'll just zip through that, whether you've got super, if someone's registered for GST. There's all some just basic examples in there. Some people, sound guys might actually charge you separate for the hire of their gear versus their labour, so you only have to pay the super on their labour. This has been out here for 4 years that people have been doing this, so certain people are pretty smart and doing the right thing. We'll just keep going through. There's the get quite asked quite often, what about ticket sales? Now, ticket sales are basically performance fees, and so if you've got a ticketing agency collecting all the fees on the night at a pub gig, and the venue doesn't touch those ticket sales, they just hand that over to the person running the band. That's just sales of tickets, and then it's the person that gets the receipt of the tickets, whether that's a sole trader, partnership trust, whoever, the band, it's whoever gets paid from those ticket sales that has the obligation to pay the person that was part of the performance their super. So it's not on the ticket sales, but if the ticket sales go to a sole trader and then they pay 3 session musicians, then the sole trader that got the ticket sales has to pay super for those session musicians. All the details you need to pay someone super there, and it's the obligations on the payer. Not if someone pays you the whole lot with the 12%, you don't have to put the 12% in. It's not your problem if you don't. It's the person that should have made sure they put it directly into your super. So there's some great tools here about the super guarantee. Do I have to pay? As I said, that would be where you'd go through for your music teachers or some of your, if you don't believe people that are part of the crew are actually an integral part of the performance, you might, if you read through the details there, you might be happy that you keep that questionnaire there and you're covered not to pay this super. Okay, and we do have this handout that I got from Music New South Wales and Generate APRA ANCOS put this together early days 4 years ago. And this is a great one-page handout for any sole traders out there. If you want to basically tell someone, here it is, it's in black and white, why you have to pay my super. I've been giving that to all my clients for 4 years now to give that to the people paying them. Okie doke, and I'll hand you over now to Ned, who's invented this fantastic software that I love, and if I can get all my clients on it in the next 12 months, I will.
I can't believe you got through all of that, Kylie. We've got 88 slides in this whole thing, so thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to push this forward. Ned, you're a
Hello.
legend, founder of Hot Giggity, Hot Links, and We Market You, and great muso and songwriter and singer as well. Um, Basically, he's a great partner of the ALMBC and provides excellent in-kind services. But like Kylie, we really showcase great work in the industry and the work that Ned has done to ensure that his platform is ready for all of these superannuation issues is just incredible. So thank you, Ned, for all your tireless work. And here he is, Mr.
No
Walker.
worries. Thanks, mate. Yeah, as Ant mentioned, I've been in the industry about 30 years as both a performer, played in a band that won Triple J Unearthed, got a marketing business, but also Hot Giggity's been my baby since about 2018. So what is Hot Giggity? For those who haven't heard of it, it's basically an all-in-one platform to manage gigs for anybody who touches live music, basically. So yeah, it's been built by musicians and industry professionals who are actually still in the industry. It's for, as I mentioned, for anybody who touches a gig, so venues, agents, band leaders, artists, and crew. Um, and it basically the goal was to bring all of the separate systems you might use in creating a booking or managing a booking into one place. So messaging, calendars, worksheets, contracts. It's got automated invoicing. We've got built-in Xero and MyOb integration with QuickBooks coming soon. There's a whole bunch of marketing or gig promotion tools in there as well. But the thing we're here to talk about tonight is obviously the superannuation tracking and payments and how that's all sort of worked through. So essentially, the first step is to collect the legal entity and the super details for sole trader artists. So we'll get into a bit of that in a little minute. The system then will basically detect if you're a venue or an agent or a hirer creating a booking for a sole trader, the system will recognize that. And then you'll go into it'll identify the super payable for that particular booking. Um, it's important to note that superannuation, as Kylie previously would have mentioned, must be paid into the sole trader super fund. It's not a line item that you can pay a sole trader and say, "Hey, here's your super amount. Pay it yourself." So that you as the payer must pay that money directly into the artist fund. We've come up with a solution, and I'll go into the problem in a little while, but for multiplayer acts, so duos and bands, where you might have the band leader or the act owner that's submitting the invoice, but they've also got sole trader players in that band. So we'll talk a bit about that further. There is a super ledger section of the platform which tracks what you owe to who and what's been paid per gig. We've got a couple of different ways of paying the superannuation. Xero integration is currently working for a number of clients who are paying quarterly. But as for the payday super, we're about to release our HG Super Pay, which is basically integrated with a super clearinghouse for that payment solution. And then an important note down the bottom, if you're a person, a sole trader musician, and you're wanting to create an invoice for anybody that's not in the Hotgiggity ecosystem, we're creating the ability for you to use the platform as an invoicing system with a payment link that somebody can click, and then that pays your super payment and your gig payment. So that's coming soon. Next slide, thanks, Ant. So as I mentioned, the sole trader, the artist, jumps into the platform. They create a profile. They would then set the sole trader or their legal entity. If it's a sole trader, they'll then need to add in all their personal information that is required and super fund details. Now it's important to note that all of the sensitive information like tax file numbers and things like that are all encrypted both on the browser at the front end as the information travels to the server, and it's encrypted on the server. So we use industry standard encryption to make sure that all the data's correct. So that's a one-time thing. An artist just puts their details in once, and then that is used then for every booking. An artist can, if they change their super fund, go in and change those details at any point, but it's a one-time thing usually. Next slide, Ed. Oop. Okay, so when the hirer creates a booking, that might be a venue or an agent. You'd select the act. Hotgiggity checks, is this person a sole trader? If they are, then the super calculation fee details will appear, and then basically the booking sheet will show the performance fee, the super amount, and the invoiced amount. So I mentioned earlier that the super fee is a separate payment to what is invoiced. And so the system will automatically calculate that and show you what that breakdown is. So as a hirer, you can see the super liability up front before you confirm the booking. Next slide, thanks, Ant. So I've probably covered off a bit of this, but an interesting point to note, and I haven't included a single slide about this, but I think probably for future presentations we need to. So the second point there states there's a toggle fee for fee. The performance fee includes super or not. Now, this is a little bit of a grey area in the legislation. So the actual legislation states that the superannuation must be paid on top of the performance fee. Where that is a little bit grey is that if we're talking about, let's say it's a covers gig, for example, and the artist is getting paid hopefully something like $110 an hour. Um, there are some venues and some of the big venue chains that are considering that hourly rate as a contractor rate, and so it includes loading for things like superannuation and holiday pay, etc. So some of those big venue chains and some of the independent venues are considering that the contract rate is of 110 an hour includes superannuation. So we've had to build the system to be able to be flexible enough to manage that at for each individual booking. So it comes down, if you're an artist, it comes down to a the contract that you have with the hirer, whether that's a venue or an agency. So you need to be having those conversations around, what's the pay for this particular booking? Is the super paid on top or not? So I think that's something that we are looking to get some clearer guidance from the ATO about. I think one of the really interesting points with this legislation, there hasn't been industry sort of consultation around some of these nuances. So we are trying to get some clarification around that point. Moving on then, so yeah, so this is what the venue, if you're a venue and you're creating a booking, so you can see there the performance fee is $400. If the fee includes super, the system automatically calculates, well, what is the super contribution and what is the amount that would be invoiced. So you can see there that the 357 plus the 42 and the cents totals up to the performance fee. If we go on to the next slide, this is where the super fee excludes super. The performance fee excludes super. So you can see that this is an agency model. So the performance fee is $450. It excludes super. So the 12% is $54, and that's put on top of the performance fee. But so the act invoice will be $450. Moving right along. And then this is, yeah, similarly, if you're an agency and the fee includes super, a very similar scenario. So we move on to the next slide. So this is where I've just included this so you can get an idea of what the invoice that's automatically generated by the system looks like. The system will, if the artist is registered for GST, it will create a tax invoice. If they are not registered for GST, it will just be a standard invoice. We do have batched invoicing in the platform. So as Kylie was saying, weekly or fortnightly or monthly, you would see each of the gigs that performer did in as a line item, and the GST would be applied if they are registered. The superannuation payable is shown as a separate section on the bottom of the invoice. So if we move on to the next slide, just got a bit of an example of what the invoice would look like. So again, for artists, it's important to note that, again, well, and hirers, that the super component is not something that can be included on an invoice and paid and expect that the artist is going to pay it themselves. So that's what the invoice looks like. We move right along. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the super ledger, we'll just dig into this in a bit more detail. So every confirmed booking writes to the super ledger for sole traders. So you can filter by the contact and the date range. And at a glance, then you can see, what's owed, the related bookings, the payment status. If you're an agency that is sending those invoices to venues, and that would have a super component in it so that you can then pay those artists their super, you'll see a ready to pay indicator showing you at a glance, okay, this venue has paid the related invoice for that super payment, and that super payment is ready to pay. So if we move on, so this is the agency view, as I mentioned. So you can see here for a particular date range, and if you're doing payday super, you can use last week, or you can set a particular date range, and you can see all of the payments that fell into that period. So you can see a list of who you got to pay, what the related booking is, the related invoice, the super amount. The green tick shows you whether whether the artist has actually added all of their all of the required super details, and then there's a ready to pay. So we click next. This is what the venue would see. This particular example is for a venue group, so they can filter by a particular venue or a whole state, and then see what's owing for them. Obviously, if you're a venue, you're not going to have super owed to you, so it's just a super AO tab. Moving right along. So the artist view. So the artist view by default is super owed to me. So you can see who the hire is, their contact details if you need to give them a call, what the super amount is, the booking that it's related to, and the status of that payment. Now we do have, you'll notice there, sorry, Ed, if you just go back to that one, you'll notice there that we have a super IO. So for example, if I'm a band leader and I've got sole trader musicians, um, and I'm required to pay them super, they would appear in that super IO page, just the same as any other hirer. We go on to the next one. Okay, so this is a problem that we have solved with our platform. So that very thing I was just talking about, if I'm a sole trader band leader and I've got players that are sole traders, in most instances, the organized one, the band leader, invoices the hirer, the venue, or the agency for the full performance fee. So by the strict letter of the law in this scenario, or the legislation, the hirer only has a contract with me, the act owner. So they're actually required to pay me the total performance fee, which is on my invoice, and they have to pay the total super amount owing to me, the act owner. But then we have a problem because then I, as the band leader, have been paid the full amount of super into my super fund. I have to pay the players super. So then I'm expected to work out how much I've got to pay the players. I need to pay it into their funds and obviously keep track of everything. So again, it's a really time-consuming, confusing process, and yeah, potentially easy to get wrong, especially with payday super coming up. So I'll just show this at next slide, an example of. So here we go. It's a four-piece band. Let's say the total performance fee is 1,600. The player splits. Just say that they're splitting it equally, is $400 per player. So the super on the whole amount would be $192. So realistically, $48 per player. Now, if the act owner invoices the hirer for the full performance fee, then the hirer must pay that full $192 into the act owner because that's the person who is invoiced. The act owner now has the full $192 of super in their super fund, but really is only personally entitled to $48 of it. And they are then responsible for on paying the rest of the super to the other three players. So I just saw someone say in the comments, yep, what a mess. And absolutely it is. So our solution in the next slide is what was an industry first solution. We came out with this last year, whereby you can turn on a setting within the system that means the player invoices are sent to the hirer with the related superannuation component. So if you're a band leader or you're an agency, you can turn on, or you're a venue, you can turn on the act player invoices paid by the agency or the venue. So then what happens is the act owner adds all of your players to the lineup of that band. When the act owner receives the booking, they can set how much each player is getting paid, invite them to the gig, and then once those players accept the booking, the act owner's invoice and all the players' invoices are sent to the hirer with the superannuation component that they are entitled to based on their gig fee splits. So then the hirer that can then pay the gig fee and the superannuation components to each of the players' super fund. It's fair, it's compliant, it's less admin for the act owner. And yeah, at the time of writing this, it was the only platform that offers that workflow. So if we go into the next slide, I'll just quickly show you. This is where you go, the performer or the artist can go into the system. They can see which acts are booked by this agency, and they can turn on that act player invoices paid by agency. I just saw that message, Alicia. Yes, in this scenario, that would be the case. But realistically, it's the only fair way that superannuation can be evenly split across all players. Next slide, Ed. Um, so this is just an example of when the act owner has received and accepted a booking, they can go through and see each of the players that is on that booking. Now you'll notice there in the super column, so Lincoln Retallick is not registered so what, sorry, not registered. He may be a partnership or a company, so superannuation doesn't apply to that player. Martin is a sole trader, so you can see a super component for him, and Mike Raby also isn't. So it gives you the opportunity to manage different legal entities within the one booking. Next slide there, Ed. Okay, so super payments. So we wanted to make it as flexible as possible with our system. So we've got a number of different ways you can pay super. Um, so the zero integration, but that's if you're a Xero user, you can connect to Xero. Our platform will create the pay run within Xero automatically, and then you can manage the super payments from there. The option B is our Hot Giggity Super Pay, so you don't need an external platform. Our platform will send the details straight to the clearinghouse and debits your nominated account, and then pays all your required super. So next slide. So if you are using Xero, a few prerequisites for paying. So you do need a Hot Giggity Pro plan, which gives you the Xero into an accounting package integration. So you do need a payroll plan, a Xero payroll plan, for the required number of sole trader artists you might be paying. You need to enroll in Xero super payments, link your Hot Giggity account to Xero, map all your superannuation liability and expense accounts, and then set up a weekly or whatever your pay run is, whether it's weekly or fortnightly calendar in Xero. And then you map each of your sole trader artists to an employee record within Xero, which our system automates that for you. The next slide. So how the actual payments work. So you'd open up that super ledger, super AO, filter by the time period you're paying. Last week is most applicable for payday, or if it's fortnightly. Tick the rows of the people you're wanting to pay, and then basically send those to Xero. Hot Giggity will automatically create the Xero pay run for superannuation and pull in each of the artist's details, their super amounts. You then just log into Xero, open the pay run, mark it as posted, and Xero will then distribute via their connected clearinghouse. And then that status of the payment comes back into Hot Giggity and marks those as paid. So we move on to the next slide. So HG SuperPay, slightly more streamlined than using Xero, but it totally depends on on how you are currently set up. So with this option, you'd have to opt into the SuperPay. It's an add-on to any plan. You don't necessarily need the Pro plan for this, but there is an add-on. Then you basically register as an employer within our HG Super Payments platform. Then you would basically need to sync all of your sole trader artists as employees to create employee records via the employee screen. So moving on to the next slide. So how it works within HG SuperPay. So you open the Super Ledger, you can see all the Super IO, select them all, and then basically just hit Pay Super. That then submits that batch to the clearinghouse and debits your nominated bank account. So yeah, it basically the super clearinghouse then distributes all of those funds automatically, and the super ledger updates with a payment reference number. So we click on to the next. So yeah, that's basically just the super ledger. If you click next, and so this is basically what you would see once a payment has been successful. So you get full auditing trail of reference numbers, transaction IDs, etc., to let you know that that payment has been successful. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information to go through, and I know it is quite overwhelming, but I'm more than happy to set up demos to talk to you individually. Obviously, happy to answer any questions you might have here. But equally, if you would like any more information, you're more than welcome to get in touch via support@hotgiggity.com. And I think that's it from me.
Nice one. Okay, so I'm going to try and get out of this. Here we go. Now I'm still sharing, I think. So just before we go, can you see that quickly?
Yep.
Yep. So just very quickly, let you know, huge amount of things that are coming up for the ALMBC. We just did a session last Thursday night on live music precinct development. We've got this session tonight. We're going to be involved in the Bloom Festival and Sound States in WA coming up, doing a session in Bunbury. We're going to be partnering with the King Street Crawl to do a little PD session there, doing some work with Q Music Industry Connect and a session on setting up a live music venue on the sunny coast. Air awards, including the Indicon breakfast, the ALMBC Boots, Bookers and Bow event at WhamCon. Big Sound, we're doing amazing things, partnering with yours and ours, and also doing some more networking sessions there. Lots of stuff happening all throughout the rest of the year. So basically, stay in touch. If you're not a financial member, please do jump in. How do I stop sharing? Stop sharing. Cancel. Stop share. There it is. Sorry, guys. Aha. Here we go. All right. I will pin Kylie and Ned, and we'll go back. Let's go back. If you were having a read of any of those questions, Kylie, as Ned was talking. Um, I think you said let's wait till the very end when Kay had this question about a not-for-profit club running a festival of monthly performances. Most of the performers are community bands or retirees, all are paid a small amount of cash, usually donation towards their performance. Where does not-for-profit fall in this scenario?
Sorry, Ant, should I go back to
Alicia's question?
well, hang on. We've got the Karina had about the music teachers. Again, I said that comes under whether they're for labour for subcontractors. So that's the questionnaire in the on the tax office might be able to help her there. The tour manager, sole trader. So someone said they're over 50% labour involved in the performance. So that's really a question of fact, I guess. How much are they an integral part of the performance? What happens when a band is a partnership, sound engineer, sole trader? Answered that one for Ziggy. Indie music schools generally take all payments from students and then pay the teachers. Okay, quite
Very
often
murky,
without
isn't it?
invoices or set contracts. Yes, it is very murky. And again, I would definitely, and they're not part, it's not a performance, it's a teaching role. So that's really more contract law and making sure you have contracts. Can't reiterate enough, having contracts in place. And those music schools should also be having workers' comp policy and the number of contractors listed and all of those things. So that's definitely not part of this super for people part of the performance. A community big band does weekly rehearsals with their conductor receiving a musical director fee. The band does around 5 to 10 gigs a year where the band receives payment. They're incorporated entity. How does super work for the managing director? I think the conductors pretty much, if they're a sole trader, they're very much a part of the performance, and the incorporated entity should be paying super for that person because they're paying a sole trader. Peter Timms, the sole trader music business, book, manage and promo all my shows. Have up to 8 to 10 musicians crew. Some have hobby forms, some ABN. We do 50 to 60 shows a year, and as a sole trader getting the services of my regular musos crew, who are all the sole traders? Am I liable to pay the super per performance? That is correct. Every time you pay a person for a musical performance that gives you a sole trader ABN, you should be paying their 12% super. So I did use an example in my last talk. I have a guy that actually runs 8 bands. He actually plays in the 8 bands, but he's actually the person that he's in his 50s, so has a full-time FIFO job, just does gigs the hell out of his weekends or when he's back in Perth. when this all came in 4 years ago, he made the decision for him to control his 8 bands, that 7 of them, it was easier for him just to invoice all via a price limited company. And then he had all his contracts drawn up with each of those bands. So he wanted to be organised. He didn't want to be pinged for this. And he's making sure he's putting the 12% on top of his fees to all the venues. So he's acting very similar to Peter there. There was one band that they obviously a very good tribute band and command 12.5K every quarter. They do about 3 or 4 gigs a year. So in that particular case, he was happy because he knew the other 4 guys very well over 30 or 40 years, that they were happy to go and get a partnership ABN, because all the guys had full-time jobs, didn't really care about the super on these, what they were doing as a passion, playing these big gigs. And so it was cleaner for them to go and get a partnership ABN. Just have to warn people with partnerships that you wouldn't just want to go into partnership with anyone, because all partners are joint and severally liable for anything any partner does. And anyone dealing with a partnership ABN, they'll just go after the person who's got the most money. So if you're quite a more mature person, forming a band in a partnership, if you've got your family, your kids, your house, lots of assets, not a great entity to be setting up in. So that's why, again, I suggest doing any of this going to your accountant. Putting on great information, grateful.
Question about the Australian Hotels Association or similar receiving specific communication about these compulsory payments, and if not, will they?
Well, we have, sorry, on our board, Ant.
Sorry?
Um,
Oh, no, that's ALH.
yeah, I'm just saying, but she's in charge of 200 venues around us, like these bigger organisations have been told the facts, haven't they?
Yes, but I think this question kind of relates to the way that artists are being paid, and there's questions further down below about a venue saying, uh, we're not paying you any extra, we can pay you exactly what you've been paid and you take super out of that, or I think it's those kind of questions that people are talking about, and they're the real kind of, I guess, arguments
Yeah.
that some
And
people
just
have.
on that, I guess, and that's exactly what I was sort of saying when I was talking earlier, that we've had conversations with some of those bigger venue groups that are basically saying the hourly rate is a contractor rate that includes loading for super, etc. So that the super component is part of the $110 per hour. Now that flies in the face of the legislation, which basically says it must be paid on top of the performance fee. But then, I've had conversations with venues that say, well, if I have to pay super on top, then I'm dropping the hourly rate to $100, for example, and the super is going to be on top of that. So it's really a really grey area that really does need some clear definition from the ATO, as to how that should be treated, I think.
I believe
Do
it's
you
pretty
definitely
much when this
you
came in,
definitely
I'm just going on the local WA booking agent setup, which I got. I tried to get all the booking agents at an information night here at the Korean Tavern, and so all the big agencies in WA were advised about it, and the bulk of them chose to basically take the 12% out of the normal gig fee. And I feel like the artists were really in a position of not being able to negotiate, and most of the booking agents that I was hearing don't even have a contract with their artists. They just basically have a deal with them that they're on their books. There's no written contract. So that's where I come back to saying, running it like a business, like, the more organized they are, the more you know your rights, and the more you ask, the more you put your 12%, put all your fees up 12%. You know, it's all about education. If we can't educate, and I also know there's a lot of venues out there that will just get around this by saying you owe us the venue fee and here's the tickets. There's all sorts of ways around things without paying the artist direct. So
so
it's
the
really
key
about the person that's like the person here saying that they've got 70, 80 acts on their books or whatever. It's about you standing up for your acts and requesting those deals with the pubs. Because I know for a fact that a lot of the bigger venues around here, they just deal with the same one or two agents for years and years and years. So it's about the bigger agencies standing up for their artists and, making sure that if they're doing the right thing. I know there's a bit of, Ned was in my office about a month ago with a huge booking agent here from WA, and, they get upset too because they're paying their artists, making sure that all the people on their lineups are getting paid. So it is really, it's just unfortunate that the contemporary music industry doesn't have, I've said before in my talks, the theatre, the film industry, they all have the MEAA standing up for them since 1992. Your dancers, they've all been getting paid super and been on salary since 1992. Actors. So yeah, it's about, even the AIM and the peak bodies all pulling together to try and get change nationally. It's just such a difficult thing because every sole trader is basically their own little business.
And that's why it's so important to join institutions. So thanks for that, Kylie. So Alexander's put their hand up. Did you want to say something, Alexander, or do you want to ask a question?
Sorry, I know that's a bit unkosher. Now that you've mentioned the MIA, I'm actually the president of the musician section of the MIA for New South Wales.
Yep.
Awesome.
So I'm very happy if people do have questions about those kinds of things. I don't want to hijack your event. That's a little bit rude, but I am very happy for
Yeah.
people to send me an email and I can chat with them about these types of questions because they are more union-y questions where it's kind of fighting against the venue of no, 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 you have to pay us.
Perfect.
I don't know. Is
And we
that
want
okay?
people to be part of institutions, and we really appreciate you coming along, Alexander. So if you can put your contact details in the chat as well, and we'll include that. That's brilliant. And
Cool.
then
Thank you.
maybe we'll grab the contact details for the other locations as well across the country.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
can direct people to wherever they need to go.
Can I
Legend.
just add there that creative work workspace, Creative Australia have just rewritten the superannuation for subcontractors section of their website. I'm going to be involved in the presentation of the update and the changes, which has come from the Tax Institute. And I was absolutely stunned to find out this is the most visited section of their website, if you can believe that. So there's a lot of interest out there. A lot of people want to know the facts, and it is real. So one of the things someone's saying, is it really real? I've been hearing before. Well, I've had a very big band basically audited. All it took was one session musician that had played with them for 6 years, make one phone call to the ATO, and the ATO's gone through the whole band over 6 years, and basically the band had to pay super on 100K worth of fees to session musicians. They were definitely not the main band. They were the fill-ins over the time. And basically, on the 100K, there was like 10K super and 6K in fines and penalties. So it's real. It is happening. The tax office are auditing musicians, the bigger bands, those big record labels and companies have been paying super for the sole trader musicians in those bands for years and years and years, including sound guys. It's a known fact for the bigger end of town. It's the little guys at the smaller end of town that are now finding out about this and saying, well, where's my super? And
Kylie,
another.
we've got 18 questions, so we might have to keep pushing along. And
Sure, you keep asking them then. That's probably easier if you ask them.
anyone that has to leave, we will answer these if you just need to log on later and grab that. But Alicia has a question saying, is it okay then to wait? So instead of paying, every week or straight after a gig or whatever, to pay and then do the payments and the super at the same time then?
I believe that's what you're going to have to do if it's just, it depends on the sort of cash flow. It's going to affect cash flow hugely. I've got some First Nations that do major performances, and she just said to me, I've got to pay the performers and the dancers on the night. They live from, performance to performance. So in certain parts of the music industry, it's not actually possible to delay these things. So I guess that then comes back to the people that are invoicing whoever's paying you, making sure that you've added the 12% on top so you've got it there and then to pay the super at the same time. But if you don't have the super details, there's no way you want to pay them the base fee without the super, because that's where you're going to get pinged.
And Alicia had this other question about whether it's possible to pay fees that are inclusive of super. I think you already answered that one.
I think that's really it all boils down to the negotiation phase for the fee and
Yep.
also the contract between the musician and whoever's paying them. So best practice would be get everything in writing and make it clear before you do the performance.
And then Kay's question about not-for-profits, paying a small amount of cash, usually a donation towards performances where they would stand.
Another thing I've heard for First Nations up in community areas up north has been a case of, they can't afford to pay in their particular cases, they've kind of bought food vouchers in terms of, it's not in gratitude for them being part of some event. I did hear that one of the big festivals was suggesting that people perhaps give a gift voucher just to be part of a performance. So, it does start to get a bit ridiculous if you're paying someone $50 and you've got to pay $5 super for them or something like that. So, sometimes it's really about how you frame things and what the documentation says.
There's a question from Nikki about whether you would have to back pay super. So if you've, say, engaged session players for 1 gig or 10 gigs or 20 gigs, do you owe them super?
Yeah, by the letter of the law, if you should have been paying, there's at any point in time, the tax office can come along and audit your books and look at your superannuation, and you could basically be, up for superannuation guarantee. All I've been saying for 4 years is people have been finding out on one of these talks. What do you do? Do you just say, well, I now know? But as I say, that doesn't save you from an audit. And I've had a client audited before they came. That was from the prior account before they came to me. There's nothing I could, from the time they've been with us, 18 months, we told them about it. They've been doing the, everything right once they found out about it, but there was nothing we could do about prior periods. It is what it is. And the funny thing about tax returns is people don't realise every tax return that gets submitted is under self-assessment. So the tax office is going to take whatever gets submitted to them and tick it off and pay you the money. Unless something stands out a mile, they might pull it up and audit it as it's lodged. But our system is self-assessment. So this is the same thing about super. It's self-assessment. So you need to make sure that you're getting the right technical advice as you go, because when you sign everything, you're signing that you're self-assessing. So if you haven't paid the super, it's on you if the tax office come looking.
Now, I think this next question was when Ned started to speak, but we'll probably come back to you, Kylie, as well. But then the super is held in the ACT Owners Fund until retirement. So in turn, they have to pay the players super out of their own funds / profits.
Yeah, so that's the example that I was using where that is the problem that we've tried to solve. And but yes, if you are the band leader and you're submitting an invoice on behalf of the whole band, and you're a sole trader, your ABN on that invoice is registered to a sole trader, then the person paying your invoice has to pay the total amount of super on that invoice into your super fund. You are then, and that's where the hirer's obligation ends. You've submitted an invoice as a sole trader for the whole performance fee. Um, they have met their obligation by paying the full amount of super into your super fund. Your obligation then starts that you then have to pay your players if they are your sole trader players. And I saw a question further down that stated that at that point, either the act owner is going to have to pay that super out of their pocket, or take the super out of the player's fee, so that the total amount equals the total amount of the agreed performance fee includes the super. But either way, the act owner still needs to pay that superannuation amount into their sole trader players' superannuation funds. That is as the act owner that is employing your performers, your players, it's your obligation to pay their super. So that's where in talking to different agents and venues, and we came up with that, the fee, the invoice per player scenario. And yes, there is a little bit more admin for a hirer, a venue, or but there are, the super payments is a select all pay once scenario for payment of invoices. In a later release, there will be payments through via the platform. But if a venue or an agency are using a platform such as Xero or QuickBooks or MyOb, they have what's called ABA files where they can batch up a whole bunch of payments, hit that once, and it pays all of the performance fees. So there are tools out there to minimize that manual labor. We've got some releases coming, but hopefully that answers Elias' question.
Okay. And there was just comments about, venues thinking that this is all too complicated and then stopping hiring acts, or, not wanting to pay lots of different invoices. And I'm not trying to plug your system, but it does try and automate that stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the goal will be ultimately that yes, they could opt for a fully automated system through our platform, but we also don't want to ring fence anybody into using that to be able to pay super. It might be that they can use the super payments and then just pay the invoices manually. Definitely paying the superannuation component. Is trickier because you've got to have the super fund details, keep them at hand. You've got to have a super clearinghouse, etc. So I guess we're trying to reduce the friction as much as we can and provide tools that will help to do that. It's certainly, it's not a silver bullet at this point, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of speed bumps along the way. And yes, I think I've seen a lot of points there that about some there being the requirement or the need for there to be clearer legislation on these points, and particularly, and I've seeing it in the comments here and all of the conversations I've been having. Because as a performer, as I mentioned, I've been performing for 30 odd years, and I'm sure you would all agree that the hourly rates haven't gone up probably in 15 years, very, very long time. And we're now faced with this real possibility that the venues are going to turn around and say, well, yes, your performance fee now includes super, which ends up being, yes, you're still getting the same amount, but you can't touch that, and that doesn't help, cash flow and paying to live. So it is. There are still some more conversations to be had, but the conversations are happening. I was in Sydney for the Cronulla Jazz and Blues Festival, and they had a state of play session with about 60 local artists and agents and venues, where there were members of New South Wales state government there. And it's very clear that they don't have a good understanding of the impact that this is having on our industry. And whether we're talking originals or covers or any part of the performance space, it's very clear that the government don't have a clear understanding of the implications that this is having, and the massive impact and flow-on effect it's going to have for so many in the industry.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add there, Ned, that why I love your software is because in-house here, we've been trying to educate. We've spent the last 4 years making sure all of our clients pay their super for their subcontractors. But we've had 28 days, it hasn't really been 28 days because like the January break is really a sharp turnaround coming out of Christmas. And every time the next one, the April break is Easter, really, when you're trying to get super into clearinghouses by a certain day and make sure you're not late, it's such a tight turnaround. And what I love about your software is that it takes the hard yards. It just means that you can have every artist set up with all their details in there and just have all your admin done so it goes bang, bang, bang. And the fact you integrate in with Xero, which is, as a public accounting practice, that's our favourite software because that's what we do all our tax returns on. But now, even better, now you might have a clearinghouse option. We've always used the ATO clearinghouse because we're always trying to keep costs down for our artists. We're very mindful of costs, which is why we've been trying to teach our artists to do this themselves. And now we just won't have the capacity to pay super every time people pay people. So the artist has to either take this on themselves, which the tool that you've built here is just fantastic in terms of making it easy for them to get all the details there.
Um, I just sorry to cut you off there, Kylie. I just saw a question from Alicia. Are you still in the room, Alicia Deep? Where I've had booking agencies say they don't pay me because it's the venue's responsibility. They just work for the venue, but the venue is who pays the musos, not that actual booking person. I've seen this a couple of times where yes, there is an agency will, I guess, to not become the employer, they will say, yes, I'm booking you into the venue. The agency sends the venue a booking fee and then expects the artist to invoice the venue. And therefore, in that arrangement, because you are invoicing the venue, it is the venue that then becomes the employer and the one that is liable to pay your superannuation. So, uh, I'm not sure whether that's the right way to go about business. It is a business model for an agency, and I have seen it done by a number of different agencies. Again, it comes back to the negotiations and the contract and your contracts and what they say. Kylie, have you got anything to add on that one?
Yeah, same thing. When I did the talk here at the start of all this 4 years ago, one of the big agents in Perth, he uses a trust account, he's had his trust account audited for 30 years he's been in business. So as an agency, he actually banks the musicians' fees into his account, takes his percentage, his 10, 15, 20%, whatever that is. So the venues are paying into the trust account and then the money's coming out of the trust account straight to the acts. And so if really the agent's removing himself, he's calling himself the middleman in that situation. So again, it comes down to all the contracts, doesn't it? Who's really dealing with who here? So you really need to be, if you're going out to perform somewhere, you need something in writing to say who's paying you, because that's who you're going to ping if you're a sole trader to get your super. Again, like Alex said, things like the hospitality industry and hotels and venues, they've all got separate workplace laws and all of that, which we're not trying to enter into any of that at all. We're just trying to talk about tax law here and the fact that super should be paid for musicians. So, if the MEA are there and you can be a member and get some assistance, that's what unions are there for, to try and protect your rights. So the more people that are members, the more people they've got. It's the same as us with the ALMBC. We're just, the more members we have, the more influence we might have on government organisations to try and get something done.
There was a question about getting access to this presentation and the downloadable PDF, etc. So all of that will be on the ALMBC site under the news section, probably tomorrow morning, probably by lunchtime. Kay has a question, what about not-for-profits? all the same. They're all treated the same. Is that right, Kylie?
The not-for-profit's not making any difference. It's just that the not-for-profit is, or a trust or a partnership or a company, doesn't matter who it's, whoever is paying the person to perform. If they're paying a sole trader, they need to pay the super. A lot of the festivals can be not-for-profits. That's irrelevant. They're paying, if they've got people performing music at their festivals, then they and their sole traders, they should be paying the super on top.
Great. And then thank you, Alexander, for answering the question about this being Australia-wide. Obviously, it's a national process that we have exactly the same superannuation laws across the whole country. Ziggy, is that a question or a comment? What I understand is booking agents can't afford to pay it. Okay, so that's that same kind of topic. I think we've talked about that enough, even though we haven't really answered it. It's an industry-wide question. Kiralee, when will we get emailed the slides? You won't get emailed them, but they will be on the ALMBC site and the recording. Sorry about your internet issues, Alicia. Maybe the MEA can include musicians. There is the Musicians Union of Australia as well. And I do believe, and Alexander, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a strong kind of agreement between Musicians Union of Australia and the MEAA as to who they do and don't represent.
The MUA doesn't really exist anymore in any functional sense. It mostly just helps with international touring visas. You can sign up if you want, but they don't have meetings. They don't do industrial support. All industrial support for musicians happens through the MEAA.
Right. I met
That
with
was a whole situation that has now been dealt with. That was before my time, but yes.
I met with someone from the MUA last week and they didn't tell me that. But there you go. Thank you very much for that. I'm just scrolling through a lot of these are comments. Anything, Ned or Kylie, that you think I've missed?
There's one there from Glenn. Yeah, should venues pay super on top of the fee or deduct it? Again, I think, yeah, we've spoken about that a number of times. And again, I think it's just trying to push for whether it's the agent or the venue, push them and say, and whether or not they will agree to put the full amount of super on top, have the conversation, because the pushback I get when I talk to a lot of venues is, hey, we're doing it tough at the minute, and yeah, there is a tipping point where they'll just say it's too hard. So yeah, definitely a conversation with at the point of the booking, part of the contract, say, look, super should be on top. It's the law. And if they, then I guess it becomes a negotiation as part of the contract to get somewhere where you're happy and the venue's happy, if that's possible.
Well, I think
Just
we
or not for profit. Sorry,
oh,
Ant.
we a question from Alicia. Re-protecting people from background super. If the agreement is in writing, is the fee is exclusive of loading / super, etc. Is that enough to cover?
Oh,
By the way, you can't contract yourself out of super by writing it in a contract that I don't pay super. It's not negotiable. People think that they say we don't pay super or something that gets you out of the obligation. It's that Section 12 of the Superannuation Act's been there since 1992. So it's basically been there from the first day super guarantee got introduced. It's just that it's been pretty much, like I say, because of the $450 limit, it didn't come to light till really 4 years ago, but it's always been there. So
Well, it
that
is
beautiful colourful pamphlet from Music New South Wales, I got permission from them and generating everything to be able to distribute that when it first all of this hit 4 years ago. That one pager it's just a clear, beautiful cash flow. It just shows you, are you paying someone, and it's like it's there in black and white. It's got it's just like yes. So whether it's a venue, an agent, whoever it is, it says here you go. You're paying me I'm a sole trader musician. Here's my super details. Thanks very much. Super choice form with all my details.
Brilliant. And that's the artists that I've had to engage recently have utilized that, and it's been great. You just receive their invoice with a document that has all of the correct information, and that's terrific. Although for Big Sound and the things we have coming up, we'll be using Hot Giggity.
Woo!
Uh, Gabs had an interesting question. Is the MEAA minimum fee the 250 fee inclusive of super? Yes, of course. So it's added on top. Thanks, Alexander.
That's been in from, I know that's been in WAM in WA now. We're trying to implement that. That's what we were going with when we were paying bands at Big Sound, Hey Ant, and we're making sure that
Yep.
the artists got their super on top when we did our
Every
little.
artist that we have ever employed gets that minimum payment plus the super on top.
Yeah, we're trying to. I think it's about trying to get that industry norm out there, and education, leading by example. Um, yeah, it's
Yeah, thanks, Alexander, and that all the state governments have endorsed that as well. A lot of local councils too are coming on board with that.
yeah. I had a lot of local councils come to me about this in the early days in WA. Yeah, from my talks, it was quite interesting. Um, but then I found out a lot of local councils decided they wouldn't employ sole trader acts. It was too hard.
So,
So
thank you all so much. This has been a huge conversation, so much information in such a short time. Thank you so much, Kylie and Ned, both of you volunteering your time to do this. Very much appreciated. If you haven't joined the ALMBC as a financial member, we'd love it if you do that. Thanks to everyone for all of your questions and all of your involvement. It's been amazing.
thanks, Ant, for organising.
Thanks, Ant, and thanks, Kylie. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ned.
No worries.